Hey YouTube, back again. It's getting kind of late, so if I start to trail off or get really quiet, it's trying because I'm trying not to wake the rest of my house. Again, notes and screen, so if I don't look directly at the camera the whole time, I apologize. Again, this is another video response to Nicotine 2. I'm really hoping I'm getting your name right because I'm not giving you a chance to tell me your name. But yeah, I saw your two videos, Doubt 101 and Doubt 101, so I'm covering these because I think that your arguments that you're making, or your refutations of our theistic arguments, are common mistakes, and so I figure if I tackle yours, then maybe I can help make these mistakes go away. So again, I got a lot going on here on this piece of paper, so if I speak really fast, I apologize for that in advance. Let's jump right on this. First off, my big problem with what you had to say is that you equated complexity, symmetry, and beauty, even though you made these different characteristics distinct, and I'll explain this as follows. When you talked about the caves and you said that they were complex, in what sense did you mean complex? If you mean geometrically complex, well, geometry is natural. Geometry happens in nature, and if nature was designed by a god, which if God created the universe, then basically this goes back to the first argument, is once you understand that a first cause is entirely necessary and that first cause created the universe, then the first cause is by necessity involved in the design of these complex structures. And like I said, complex how? Geometrically? Geometry is natural, and so geometry is going to happen. Geometry is similar to the lottery analogy you used later, which I will. You used the lottery analogy improperly. A better way to use it would be to refute your own argument now in saying that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of possible shapes. One of them has to be chosen. And so the simple fact that they are chosen, making them complex, I still like to know in what sense. Symmetry is produced naturally, and if God created the universe, so he created the laws of nature, and laws require a law writer, so I won't really get heavily into this. By the way, there are some questions in your video I'm not going to tackle or answer because there's just too much going on. And beauty, that's entirely subjective to humanity, and so we humans find these things that you described to be complex in, I guess, some sense. I don't find them to be complex. I find them to be symmetric and beautiful, but those things are geometric and subjective. And so the same thing I would say about water. Waterfalls are not complex at all. They are rocks with water going over them. They are entirely uncomplex, and so that's a horrifying example. The same thing with canyons. They're not complex. They're holes in the ground that were produced by erosion. They are not complex. They may be beautiful, and they may be symmetric, and they may be, I can't think of another word, geometric, but that doesn't make them complex. And so you cannot make these three words synonymous. You simply cannot do that. Second, I want to say that the caves, if they are complex, if they're complex in a mineralistic sense, they already have the minerals. So the minerals are not produced, where in biology, these new features have to be produced. In cosmology, heavier elements have to be produced. And my question for you, one of my big questions for you, is if you follow the common cosmological understanding of the universe popping into existence at the Big Bang, I would ask you, how do we have any elements heavier than iron? Because the fission that happens in our sun, which is how it's posited that all of the elements were created, can only produce elements as heavy as iron. So where do the other elements come from? I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Also, you mentioned as you were going through saying that just as we have naturalistic explanation for the origin of the universe, likewise we have a natural explanation for the origin of life, which I would like to hear because I've never heard a scientific explanation for a biogenesis that actually worked, which is why that one's still up for debate. I also you can watch some of my other videos and they can completely disprove evolution for you, which you cited in your video. I won't get into that now. The age of the earth, millions of years, things like that. So watch my other videos if you'd like to get into that. But other than that, I'd like to know your theory on abiogenesis. Also, let's see. You said that if God created the universe, and I'll give you, let's say that evolution happened and all these other things happened. Why would God use such inefficient and tedious, or no, you said slow and tedious and You said imperfect, and I want to know, first off, in what sense do you mean imperfect? Because they are not necessarily imperfect, or at least I'd like to understand why they're imperfect. Slow and tedious, maybe, but it's God's decision, and who are you to impose your idea on God? Just because he can do things one way or the other way doesn't mean that he has to do either. He can choose. He's God. And so your question is a legitimate question, but it doesn't make the argument for the existence of God, despite these things, any more weak. It's just your opinion. And you said that if God was all loving, and that's when I had to stop you, because God is not all loving. God necessarily cannot be all loving if he's any sort of loving, because all loving is impossible. If God, well, these are arbitrary, but just for example, well, here, I'll give you some good ones. If God loves people, then he must hate. If God loves justice, he must hate injustice. If God loves righteousness, he must hate unrighteousness, and so on and so forth. So all loving is completely impossible. I won't get too much into that. If you'd like to talk about that once more, let me know. Allowing pain and suffering. Why did God, if God knew what was going to happen ahead of time, why did he create? I can only give the Christian understanding of this, and God is a relational being who created us with the ability to love, and if he created us without the ability to choose away from him, if he had made it to where we could only pick him and he was the only option, then that's not love. We're robotic in that sense. There's no choice. Love involves a choice. If I love Mountain Dew, this is probably copyright, but I don't care. If I love Arizona green tea and I love Mountain Dew, the one I pick is the one I actually love. If I can only drink one, the one I actually pick is the one that I actually love. And God created us saying, you can choose to live with me and obey me and be righteous and be blessed and all these other things, or you can choose to do things your own way and you're going to suffer the consequences of those. And we chose to do things our own way and suffer the consequences, and those are the consequences. Even though he knew about these things in advance, changing them would change us and make us robotic, and thus defeat the entire purpose of the creation of the universe. But I digress. I already got in the elements. Okay. And then you said that we have the cosmological argument, meaning that the constants, if changed, the odds of all the life-permitting constants coming into existence was extremely large. And you said, how do we know this? Because we can't run these experiments on the cosmos. And I would say that you accept evolution and the Big Bang Theory and a lot of other scientific theories, and yet there is just one area of science in which you completely disagree with, despite the fact that it is a science, and that is the understanding of cosmology. These constants and the universal constants and all these other cosmological constants are not something that creationists simply pull out of their butt. These are legitimate scientific facts, and so if you're going to dispute them, I'd like you to do it scientifically instead of just saying, well, how do we know? Dispute them scientifically, or they stand because the scientific community agrees that they stand. I wouldn't normally say that, but you're the one who's arguing scientifically, and so I'd ask you to refute scientifically. Otherwise, please don't bring that subject up. And then well, here, I'll do one more. I'll debunk your lottery analogy, and then I'll go on to your quote here real quick. Your lottery analogy is entirely false, where you said that if the universe had to, we call lotteries a miracle. I don't think lottery is always necessarily a miracle, but when you said that the lottery picks all these numbers, someone has to win, that's not true. There are a lot of lotteries that no one wins. There are tons of lotteries that no one wins. Lotteries probably wouldn't happen if somebody won every single time. That's just a false analogy. Your analogy from picking 728 does not follow from the lottery, because a lottery is a one-time thing. It happens once, and then it completely changes. Everyone has to pick again, and the numbers are done over again. But yours is a random number generator that just picks random numbers. So if you don't understand why the argument doesn't follow, then I can't help you. But I just want to real quick cover this. You said the critical problem with the argument from fine-tuning is that it makes a subjective value judgment that a universe containing humans is favorable to one that does not contain humans, and then assumes that there is a supernatural designer who makes the same judgment. Actually, what the argument is saying is that we know from understanding cosmology that the likeliness of us existing is so far beyond the range of impossibility that we should not exist. Yet we do exist. The only way for this to be possible is for us to be predetermined to exist and someone to make the active decision for us to exist, making the odds being 1 in 1. He chooses for us to exist, therefore we exist. It's not a value judgment or saying that we are more favorable. It's saying that we were created. That's what it says. So again, thank you. Hope you respond. Peace and God bless.